7 buildings that have taken more than 100 years to build. There are buildings around the world that, due to economic issues, the outbreak of wars, or because of their ostentation, have taken more than 100 years to build, some of them remaining unfinished to this day. Colonia's Cathedral, located in Cologne, Germany. The Cologne Cathedral is another example of Gothic architecture, the construction of which took more than 100 years. The first stone was laid in the year 1238, however, its construction ended in the year 1880, that is, 632 years later. At this time, it was considered the tallest building in the world, which housed the largest bell and the oldest painting of Jesus crucified. It is worth mentioning that it survived the bombings during World War II. Alhambra, located in Granada, Spain. Located in Granada, Spain, the Alhambra is a great example of Moorish architecture and one of the buildings whose construction took more than 100 years. Thanks to the innumerable amount of details and the wood carving on the ceilings, its construction began in the year 1238. However, it was partially completed in the year 1370, although there are restorations in different areas today. National Monument of Scotland, located in Edinburgh, Scotland. Located on Calton Hill, the National Monument of Scotland, it was originally designed to honor the Scots who died in the Napoleonic Wars of the early 19th century. Although the project was inspired by the Greek Parthenon, the lack of funds in 1822 caused it to remain only on the facade and 12 columns. Thus, its construction was abandoned in 1826, and it remains unfinished to this day. Monument to the Revolution, located in Mexico City, Mexico. During the time of the Porfiriato in Mexico, Porfirio Diaz commissioned the construction of the Monument to the Revolution. The building would originally be a legislative palace, with large columns and European domes designed by Emil Bernard. However, the outbreak of the Mexican Revolution interrupted the project, so despite the fact that the first stone was laid in 1910, this project was never fully completed. Metropolitan Art Museum, located in New York, United States. Another of the most famous unfinished buildings is the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York, better known as the Met. After moving to its current location on Fifth Avenue, Calvert Vaux's initial Gothic design was restored by Richard Morris Hunt around 1900. However, the construction of the imposing facade was interrupted by the financial panic of 1901, while the carved sculptures of the limestone stacked pyramids were never carried out. Westminster Abbey, located in London, England. Famous for being the seat of the coronation of the kings and queens of England, the construction of Westminster Abbey began in the year 1245. However, the extension of 2 towers were carried out in the year 1745, that is, 500 years later. Thus, this Gothic-style work, which originally belonged to the Catholic faith, is currently the most important Anglican temple in England and Wales, although its internal decoration is not yet finished. The Holy Family, located in Barcelona, Spain. One of the most famous unfinished buildings is the Basilica of the Sagrada Familia by Gaudí, in Barcelona, whose construction began in 1882. The death of the famous architect in 1926 and the outbreak of the Spanish Civil War in 1936 were factors that prevented its completion, since the original documentation on the work was lost. However, its current construction is financed by visitor tickets, so this Gothic work is expected to be completed in the year 2032.